Hey, it's Katie Moran. Welcome to Artistic Spirit. Today I'm here with Lynn Gillette, who was a school principal who found herself making an unexpected life transition when her four young nieces lost both of their parents within 12 months of each other, navigating life-altering transitions for the girls who were living with unfathomable loss while fiercely advocating for the children's wishes in the legal arena. This meant coming face to face with the very deep-seated limiting beliefs and emotions that Lynn had worked to repress much of her life. Lynn found herself at a crossroads. Continue being a victim to circumstances or rise above and truly claim her power once and for all. Lynn chose the latter and embarked on a journey of self-discovery and healing, embracing holistic practices and intentional thinking. Breaking free from self-doubt, Lynn fully stepped into her personal authority, which not only liberated her, but also empowered her newly formed family. Now, as a master certified life coach, Lynn helps people navigate their own challenges, turning struggles into strengths, tragedies into triumph, and limiting beliefs into unlimited possibilities. Whether it is through one-on-one coaching, keynote speaking, or well-being workshops, Lynn serves others and empowers them to cultivate the capacity, confidence, and courage to create the life they desire, no matter the circumstances. Welcome today.
Thank you.
I am so excited to hear this idea of the power that we hold within us, and that when we think of being stuck in a certain situation and think about feeling like we can't overcome it, that we can be reminded of stories like yours and just this idea that we hold power within us. And every time we say that our circumstances outside of ourselves are more powerful, we're giving that power away, and that the strength of that situation really comes from the power we give it. So I'd love to hear how people can take back their power.
Well, first and foremost, Katie, thank you for having me and talking about this because I think it's really important that we reach as many people as possible with this message of that power within you. Because a lot of us live our lives as victims to the circumstance and we wait until the circumstances change before we think that our life can change and get better. And actually, I recently read that healing the world is an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
And that really resonated with me because that healing does happen on the inside first. If we wait until circumstances change, we could be waiting our whole life and never get to experience life the way that we truly want to. And so for me, I had to really dig into what was holding me hostage to these circumstances. We had a lot happening in a very short amount of time. So it was just slam after slam after slam. And I knew that if I waited for things to change on the outside, not only was I not going to live a life that I really was enjoying, but these four beautiful girls and my husband. And so I really dove into the holistic practices and to also intentional thinking. And when I came across the intentional thinking, I first heard about it from Stacey Bayman, who is a coach for coaches. And she is where I first learned that what we think is going to create a feeling in our body. That's our feeling, and that feeling will drive our actions, and our actions are what get us results. It's really not the circumstance, it's how we're thinking about the circumstance that gets us our results. And that thinking comes from within us. That's the power. That's part of the power that's within us. Our power, the power of our minds, really can help determine the quality of our lives. The quality of our thoughts determine the quality of our lives.
I think that's so powerful. And when we think about thoughts, I think so many of us feel that our thoughts aren't something that we can change and that it's automatic. So what do you say to people who feel who feel that their circumstances lead to the feeling that leads to the thought, rather than the thought leads to the feeling to the circumstance, or how you interpret it.
Yeah, one of the most important things we can do is acknowledge how we're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't about not acknowledging that, or this notion of, think positive and it'll all be great. And that actually can lead you into this toxic positivity where you're not acknowledging what you are feeling inside.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't acknowledge that, it builds up like a pressure cooker
Mm-hmm.
to the point then that we are starting to experience anxiety, panic attacks, constant perseverating on one issue, and it really diminishes the quality of how we're experiencing our life.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things we have to recognize is how we are feeling and lean into curiosity about where that feeling's coming from. One of the things that I teach my clients is EFT, or emotional freedom technique, or tapping. That is something that really elevated my life. I had worked through a lot of repressed emotions and feelings that I had had even from childhood. And I thought I was doing great. There was one particular person in my life who at one point had had a lot of control over my life. Their voice was the dominant voice I heard in my head. And really, no matter what I had achieved professionally and personally, always was this constant voice in my head about, not being good enough. And I really was always questioning my worthiness and trying to prove myself in so many different ways to show that I was worthy, when really deep seated, I didn't think I was. And so I did a lot of work and felt like, okay, I've dealt with that. I'm feeling good. I have, my personal authority over my life. This person no longer has control over me. And then something happened to really trigger that all up. And I just thought, whoa, where is this coming from? And I could just feel my, a rapid heart rate and kind of shaky and clammy. And I really decided, okay, I told my husband at the time I was teaching school, and I said to my husband, I'm going to call in sick tomorrow. I'm using a sick day. I need to, for my mental health, and I need to figure out another tool to help me with what I'm feeling inside. And he had said, are you sure you want to, be gone from school? Do you want to just see how you're feeling in the morning? And I said to him, if this were manifesting as a physical ailment, you would see me running 104 temp, being lethargic, and you'd be questioning whether to take me to ER. And so I said, I'm going to listen and honor what I'm feeling inside. And I know that I need to take tomorrow for me to figure out another tool for my toolbox to help me deal with what I'm feeling inside. And that next day I did research and I came across the EFT, or the tapping method. And it was a game changer, because what tapping does is it brings out that feeling that you are having, and you can acknowledge it and you bring it into the light. Because what we don't address, what we continue to resist, will persist. So if I keep pushing that down, that emotion actually starts resisting and persisting. And everything is energy. We're energy, emotions are energy, thoughts have energy. So that energy, the more it gets pushed down, it's pushing back and starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you just start to attract more of what is not serving you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like a pressure cooker, and it's going to blow, whether, comes out, like I said earlier, like a panic attack, anxiety attack, a weakened immune system, depression, sadness. And so I dove into the tapping and acknowledged how I was feeling, brought it into the light. And then I coupled that with the new beliefs that I wanted to live into. And you combine that with tapping on certain points of your body, because that meridian of energy is flowing through you. You tap on certain points with those affirmations and it clears those blocks. That was a game changer for me. And tapping is something, it's one of the many tools that I use with my clients that has really allowed them to free themselves from those emotional chains that were holding them down. So that's one of the things that I do to help people. So the mind and body, that connection is so strong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I don't acknowledge it, it just continues to build. And then what happens is you start to feel you know, in my example, you start to feel more triggered and more helpless and hopeless. And then therefore you start to have those thoughts about not being good enough or someone else has the power. And it's just a cycle that goes around and around and around. And so I had to acknowledge how I was feeling, know what was coming up in my body, and then change my thought, how I
Mhm.
was thinking about the situation in a way that served me and allowed me to harness and leverage my power.
Yeah, I'm super interested in this idea and like the concept in itself about how would a thought change the way someone interacts with their reality. Like, I don't know if you use like the word like inspired action, like kind of
Mhm.
like having a better thought that is more um useful, like you can
Mhm.
do something about what's going on in your life.
Right.
And like what would be an example of kind of like empowering thoughts that allow for you to take that power back? I don't know
Yeah.
if you work with mantras at all.
Yeah. I love affirmations. I love mantras, especially when you do pair them with something like tapping or with breathing, something that allows that flow
Mm,
between the mind and the body. Um, so one example could be just springboarding off what I just shared too, is originally my thought was, why am I feeling like this? I've already dealt with this.
mm,
So then what happens is you start having this feeling of like kind of shame and blame. Like, what's wrong with me? Why I dealt with this? Why am I feeling like this? So that shame and blame kind of really sets in. And then those actions, you start taking action from that place. And those are going to be actions that don't serve you. So it's going to be negative self-talk, definite decrease in energy, less sleep. And that results in you not being able to show up as your best self for you, for others. And it results ultimately in circumstances or other people
mm,
having your power.
mhm,
So I changed my thought to, I am worthy. I am worthy of taking time to help myself heal. I am worthy of taking time for myself to heal. That then creates a different feeling or emotion in my body. And that emotion or feeling is one of empowerment. When I'm coming from a place of empowerment, my actions look very different.
mhm,
So my actions turned into taking one of my sick days. Like, we are entitled to take our sick days. It's okay.
mhm,
Finding a tool that resonated with me, which then ended up really creating a lot of freedom within me, that feeling of release and empowerment, which then allowed me to think more clearly, more creatively. I was getting better sleep. And then what really was cool was I was able to teach others how to do it.
mhm.
And then they start feeling more empowered. And then I started creating videos of it on my Facebook page, and it really resonated with people. And so changing the thought to, I am worthy of taking time for myself to heal,
Mhm.
changed everything. It's
Yeah,
very empowering.
I love the idea of like the ripple effects of empowerment, because I think a lot of the times people have this idea that self-care, self-love, that it is selfish and that somehow it's not selfless. And I think sometimes the most selfless thing we can do is take care of ourselves,
Mhm.
because we really, it's like an illusion that we have control over anyone
Yeah.
else. And like the idea that like even like when you're with children, like the idea that like you're gonna like tell them what to do or like show them how to do something the right way, like they're not gonna listen if you're not doing it yourself. And
Right.
this idea that like I think, because I would say probably the person like burdened with this illusion that like we can control people, it would probably be mothers.
Mhm.
And like the idea that it's okay for them to burn out in service of their children. And I think it's so important to recognize that like every ounce of healing work that we do for
Yeah.
ourselves is really like like you've said before, like it's taking action on healing the world. And like
Right.
our little universe is something that becomes this like example for other people. And I think so much of the narrative, even like I've posted before online and I've talked about self-love, and they're like, oh, well, loving others is more important than self-love. And like I don't like the idea that like you have to love yourself to be in a romantic relationship with someone, because I've had a relationship expert come on before, and she said like no one ever really loves themselves fully and no one is ever fully healed. And I think that is another illusion. But this idea that loving others is in a way selfless. And I think specifically in today's world, so many people give so much of themselves to be loved by
Mhm.
others.
Mhm. Yeah. And if you think about it, loving others, in order for me to love them the way that I want to love them,
Mm-hmm.
I have to be in a good place.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be well in order to love them to the level that I want to truly love and love them and show up for them.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I need to be loving myself or in a healthy place. And so therefore, that's not selfish. The most unselfish thing I can do for the people I love is to be well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
And
so important. And I constantly see people like not really understand that, which is so funny because I feel like in a lot of the communities I'm a part of, like that's like very like basic, kind of like that's the basic starting point, and you almost
yeah,
get like tired of hearing it.
yeah,
But like there are people who like aren't in kind of like circles where they do like inner work and like aren't exposed to these ideas. And I'd like to speak to them too, and not just people who are well versed in these
yeah,
ideas.
yeah, absolutely. And they say it all the time on a plane, put your oxygen mask on first before you start assisting others. Because if you don't and you start assisting others, the number of people that you can assist diminishes completely because you're not going to last very long without the air, without that oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can kind of think about it, like my brain, a lot of our brains work in analogies. But if you can think about that analogy,
Mm-hmm.
that helps a lot to realize the importance of you showing up for yourself first so that you can show up for others. And I think about, just with us, my husband and I having the 4 girls now, if I wasn't taking care of myself and did the work of, healing and helping others, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we'd be in this great of a place that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I take actions to better myself because I love them. I want to show up for them and I want to show up for myself too. I want to live with purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we need to get rid of the whole thing that it's selfish. The truly the most unselfish thing you can do for those you love is to help yourself be well
Mm-hmm.
and love yourself.
Yeah, and when you think about the analogy, I think it could seem so like, oh, I have to put it on my child's head first, like I have to take care of them. But then you think about like in the case with you, you have 4 girls. So like you wouldn't be able to breathe or like be
Right.
capable of doing that if you did all of theirs before yours.
Right.
And like I think that's where it like comes into play, that it's like it could be simple to give a little bit of like your full cup, but it's like when it's not coming from your overflow, it's just not sustainable. And
Right.
like maybe if your plan is to love one of your children, you'll have enough energy, but I would just say that is not a strategy. But yeah, just this idea that it's really an illusion that like we do have this like control over other people, and that like our
Right.
power comes like, and I think like especially like if you ever do any research on like narcissism, like this idea that like the control isn't external, like the control is always
Yes.
inside of us, like we can control ourselves, and that's what autonomy is. And we have an autonomy like in the environment we're in, but like we don't hold the keys to other people's autonomy.
Yeah.
And I think even like kind of like the danger of like spiritual gurus, or like even like some coaches that aren't like well trained, is this idea that like healing or success or results is somehow attributed to like the coach or the guru, and
Yes.
that that person didn't earn it themselves in their own life. And I think it's so beautiful when coaches like you and just when people recognize that healing comes from like that person and like that
Yes.
person's autonomy. And I would even say like I think that's like where true freedom comes from.
Yes. Absolutely. It's funny that you said that because last week I was with a client and it was her fourth session. And she said, I had no idea all this power was within me. She said, this is just wild. And that's, you hit it right on the head. It's not about us coming in and being someone's power. It's about us helping people discover theirs and then leveraging it, using it for their highest self
Mhm.
and creating that life that they want and enjoying life at the quality that they want to experience it. But you're so right. The thing is, it's funny because people will say, oh, it's really great to have a coach all your life. And I'm not opposed to that at all. I think that's awesome. But as far as you discovering your power and exercising it, living into it, and making it part of like, yes, this is who I am. My hope for my clients is that they aren't with me forever
Mhm.
because I'm not the answer.
Mhm.
I'm the helper at the time. I'm the one to help them discover that power within them and then teach them specific tools on how to use that to really expand that power and keep it sustainable. But my whole thing is I want them growing their wings and
Mhm.
flying off and creating and then sharing with others so that we have that whole huge ripple wave effect. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's really not about one person. We can be inspired by one person. We can, but it's really about you stepping into your power. And sometimes, that's where a coach can really help you or some kind of a mentor is to
Mhm.
help you step into that, discover it, leverage it. But I tell you what, that was the highlight of my week to have my client who's only in her fourth session say, I had no idea this was all within me,
Mhm.
you know, and she's making things happen for her family and her job.
Mhm.
Um, it's really amazing. And I even think, I have one of my clients is a teacher and she had a major, level change in what she was teaching from younger to much older students. And she came to her session and she was so, stressed about conferences because she's never had conferences with older, kids and
Mhm.
families. And so her whole thought was, I am afraid. I am afraid.
Mhm.
I'm afraid. And specifically, I said, what are you afraid of? She was like, I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to answer all their questions. I don't know this curriculum. And so that was creating this anxiety as her feeling. And then her actions, she was not sleeping. She was perseverating. It was really even creeping into her mind while she's trying to teach. So that whole quality again of how we're experiencing life is diminishing because of the
Mhm.
thought she was having is what
Mhm.
if I don't know how to answer their questions? And so we worked through it. And her thought model, she's like, wait a minute. Because I said to her, how do you want to feel? A lot of times you can start with, because we're feeling very feeling beings, you can start with how do you want to feel? And she said, I want to feel calm going into conferences.
Mhm.
And when we worked through it, she said, I know how to build relationships.
Mhm.
And I said, what if that's your thought? I know how to build relationships.
Mhm.
You don't have to be a certain age for me to build a relationship with you. Like I know how
Mhm.
to build relationships. And when you think about that, she's like, oh my gosh, that makes me feel calm in my body. Because I always ask them, how are you feeling in your body right now? That thought,
Mhm.
definitely calm. And then those actions, she was able to take those actionable steps. And she said, oh my gosh, I'm going to start the conference out with positive, something unique to their child. You know, I'm going to greet them with a smile and welcome them. I want them to feel my warm energy.
Mhm.
And I'm going to have examples of their child's work and their growth that they're having. And she just really stepped into owning that new thought. So at
Mhm.
our follow-up, I said, how did conferences go? She's like, they were amazing. And I said, how many families asked about curriculum? And she said, none.
Mhm.
Exactly, because they want to know about their child. And does my child have friends? Do you like my child? What do you appreciate about them?
Mhm.
You know? And so that power came from her because I can't go to conferences with her, right? I can't run her conferences and things like that. She cultivated that power within her
Mhm.
by changing how she was thinking about conferences, changing her thought. And
Mhm.
that came from within her. And now what's so cool is that's within her. She can do that every single time now with conferences. She can apply that to certain meetings she's having.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's about helping people cultivate that power, leveraging that power. Because if we can think negative thoughts that really diminish the way that we are experiencing life and that spinning, we can create thoughts that serve us.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm curious. So when someone becomes more empowered and really steps into who they are, I have definitely heard thought leaders on this say that not all of the negative thoughts go away, and
Mhm.
that it's not necessarily the objective. And I think I've heard people say think a better thought, like the bad thoughts come that aren't helpful, that don't empower you. And it's like you can kind of like counter it with a thought that does serve you and your
Yes.
mission and purpose. So I'm curious, what would you say to someone who is trying to go on that path, but is judging the negative thoughts and keeps identifying with the negative thoughts and thinking, if I'm thinking a negative thought, I'm not a positive person?
Right. Yeah. Well, here's something that's so critically important is to honor that because we are humans,
Mhm.
we are going to have negative thoughts at times. I'm a life coach. I do this all day, every day. And you bet I have negative thoughts at times. And
Mhm.
so, what we have to celebrate and remember, in fact, let me go back to the example I used when I was triggered. And my thought was, oh my gosh, I thought I worked through this. What's wrong with me? Right? There's that shame and
Mhm.
blame. Like, I thought I did this. I thought it was done. I thought it was over. I guess I'm not as strong as I thought I was because here it comes again.
Mhm.
What we need to really look at is looking at intensity, duration, and frequency. So, this is what I mean by this. When I was triggered, if I think about the intensity, duration, and frequency of those emotions coming up in me, what this person or what happened, what triggered, what the person did that then I internalized and triggered, I have to look at is this moment of triggering, is it as intense as it used to be? Is it lasting as long as it used to last? And is it happening as often as it used to happen?
Mhm.
And if any one of those things has decreased, that is a win.
Mhm.
That is something to be celebrated. Chances are it's going to be more than one of those things has gone down. So for me in that case, what had decreased significantly when I asked myself, whoa, before I start shaming and blaming, has the intensity, duration, or frequency of what I'm feeling right now by being triggered, has that decreased in any way over the span of how I've been working on this? And the answer was yes. While the intensity was very high, the duration of how long it lasted compared to how long it used to last was shortened. By that next day, when I started doing the tapping, and then the day after, I had worked through it and felt so much better. Where before, that would have had me going for at least a week. And
Mhm.
here it was 48 hours. And then if I look at how often I am triggered or was being triggered, well, I used to be triggered by this particular person quite frequently, basically whenever they decided they were going to push buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's so neat is when I really thought about it, I was like, wait a minute, this is January. Actually, yeah, late January, early February. I was like, the last time I was triggered was back in August, September. Like, this is huge. That's a huge decrease in the frequency. So that's what I always remind my clients when a trigger happens.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of going to shame and blame, let's stop and reflect. Let's get curious. Let's get curious. Has this gone down in intensity, duration, and or frequency? Every time it is a yes. Every single time, one of those areas, more likely though, two at least, have gone down. And that in itself is very, again, affirming and empowering because you
Mm-hmm.
realize, oh yeah, this is not about perfection
Mm-hmm.
at all. This is about progress.
Yeah, I think that's so important for anyone to really celebrate those small wins and to actually like have them be tangible. But this is something not directly related, but that I am always so curious about. And I figured you'd probably have a great answer for this as a life coach. How do you celebrate yourself and how do you celebrate others? And what allows you to give yourself permission to celebrate yourself in the way that you celebrate others?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I have really leaned into is I don't need a cannonball when a compliment will do. Because I think so many times I wasn't celebrating the way I wasn't even celebrating because I thought I had to do something
Mm-hmm.
grand,
Mm-hmm.
like I gotta go like, oh, to celebrate, I should buy myself a new outfit, or to celebrate, I should go get a manicure, but I would, so then I wouldn't do it because either I was like, oh, I don't want to spend the money on that, or I don't have time for that. And so then I wouldn't celebrate because I thought it had to be this big cannonball when
Mm-hmm.
actually it's just a compliment. A compliment is huge. So like saying to myself, way to go, girl. Yeah, one of my nieces, she's so funny. She always, one of her sayings is always like, "Hey, queen, hey, queen," and she calls a lot, a lot of queen. And so, then I'll just say to myself, like, "Way to go, queen!" Like, yeah, way to hold your power.
Mm-hmm.
And my clients too, just I really encourage them to talk to themselves kindly, like as if you would one of your dearest friends.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you say to a friend who accomplished something? You would just be like, "Oh my gosh, you rocked it."
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay to say to up to ourselves, like, "Oh my gosh, I freaking rocked that." Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, way to show up for yourself, girl. Or as my niece would say, queen. And so um just again, it doesn't have to be huge. Just talking to yourself and complimenting yourself. And one thing too is let the loudest, kindest voice in your mind be yours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's a whole shift because depending on how you grew up, like I firmly believe that the voices of authority that you heard growing up tend to become the voices in your head as you get older. At least that was my experience. I'm not saying that science proves that or anything like that, but that was my experience that things that I heard as a child from people of authority and even from, peers become that internal voice. It became my internal voice in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where so many of the limiting beliefs were just so deep seated. And
Mm-hmm.
so working to shift that and say, wait a second, why am I letting other voices take up precious real estate in my mind and in my thoughts? The kindest, most amplified voice in my mind needs to be mine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where those compliments can really shine.
Yeah, I love how you talk about like not making it a cannonball because I think for me, like I used to be like, oh, like I never really do anything to celebrate. Like I never celebrate myself. And I actually like felt shame in it. Like I felt like,
Yes.
oh, like I'm not like doing enough like when something goes well. And I started to learn kind of like that. And I tried many things that were like bigger. And I would just not be happy with it and be like, I was happy about this, but now it's like I feel like I overdid it. And like I've learned that like even though something seems like a celebration, that doesn't mean that's the way I have to celebrate, and I might not
Yes.
like that. And something that's like really a big thing for me is like listening to a book or like watching like a movie that I really love. And like for me, like those things don't seem like a big celebration, but like it really is impactful. And what's most important is I enjoy the time and myself, and that took a lot of learning of like what I like, and
Mhm.
kind of like giving myself permission to have my celebrations look
Mhm.
look different than how it would be for someone else. And also in learning that, it's helped me celebrate other people in better ways, because some people might want you to like make like a birthday post for them, and some other people would like really love for you to like spend time with them. And I think it's so important that we recognize that, like, again, going back to this idea of like self-love and self-care, and even getting to know yourself isn't selfish, because the better we know ourselves, the more insight we have on other
Yeah,
people.
absolutely. An example that comes to my mind with that is when we first got the girls, there was so much um, grief and but guilt inside of me when good things would happen. So, for example, birthday celebration, I would find myself feeling guilty that I was the one there to celebrate, do all the fun stuff. And it wasn't
Mhm.
my brother or the girl's mom getting to do that. And so that guilt starts setting in. And when that happens, your whole energy level changes.
Mhm.
And if I continue to operate at that level, how do I then celebrate the girls?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know? And
Mhm.
so by replacing that, the thought of I am, I shouldn't be the one celebrating with them, to I am so glad I can be here to create these celebrations. It shifts something in you. You show up in such better energy, and then you're celebrating others in such a better way, um,
Mhm.
and in a way they deserve.
Mhm.
And so again, that ties back to again changing that thought of whether it's, you know, I am worthy, or whatever the thought is that will serve you to help serve others.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it is really powerful when you can sink into thoughts that celebrate yourself, because it will ripple out. It's like, I think ripple is even too small of a word for me to be
Mhm.
using.
Mhm.
It impacts. It impacts everybody that you touch, whether in your workplace, your audience, your followers, your family. It impacts everybody. And so if you can take time to celebrate you, and I love the examples that you used for how you celebrate. And
Mhm.
really what celebrating comes down to is, what makes me feel so dang good inside for
Mhm.
having
Mhm.
accomplished this or for having handled this situation.
Mhm.
Really, another way to celebrate too is to reflect back on how you would have handled it or how you would have done something 6 months ago or a year
Mhm.
ago. You will see the growth so much if you, that's a celebration too. And I'll think back and go, oh my gosh, a year ago, I was coaching in my bedroom on a TV tray, only able to do virtual because I didn't have an office.
Mhm.
And then I had the TV tray set up on a shoebox so that the camera was at a decent level. And then I had to clean up everything behind me on the dresser to make it look okay and halfway professional. And then you should have seen the other side. I mean, it was just a disaster zone because when we brought in the girls, I mean, we didn't get a bigger house. We just kind of threw everything in our bedroom and then made bedrooms for them. And then I look and I'm like, oh my gosh, now look at, I have this beautiful office space. My clients love it. And some still are virtual because they might be in another part of the country or what have you.
Mhm.
But they come in here and it feels so safe. And
Mhm.
I love it. It's a place for me to come to create.
Mhm.
That's a celebration to just sit here in this chair, let the sun come in and go, look how much has changed in a year. Wow. And just taking time, how's it feel inside? It feels so amazing. That's a celebration, taking that time to do
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
If there's one message that you want people to remember from this episode, what would it be?
I would say that if you can change the quality, I'm not even going to say can because you can. Sometimes you just need somebody to help you do it.
Mhm.
Change the quality of your thoughts, and you will truly step into empowerment and change the quality of your life. And I believe it was Dr. Wayne Dyer who um, had said, change your thoughts, change your life. So true. It is so true. And you just might need help to do that. Get yourself that help, invest in yourself, whether it's me as a coach or some other coach in your area, you are worth it. But if you want to truly live an empowered life, give your power to your thoughts, not your circumstances.
Amazing. Tell me about some of your offerings you have coming up and where people can find you.
Yeah. So right now, as you and I visit today, my website is almost complete. So I believe it will all be set up by the time this airs. And so that is www.lynnGillette.com. And then if they want to reach out with questions, I'm at hello@lynnGillette.com. I have a Facebook, lynnGilletteCoaching.com, that they can find me on. And I'm just super excited to start. I've been doing some speaking, and that's been really fun in the well-being workshops. And of course, I absolutely love my one-to-one coaching practice. There's just something so intimate about meeting someone where they are, learning about where they want to be, and then helping them get there.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm super excited to serve, and I'm just so grateful that Katie, we have people like you in this world who also are so committed to helping people grow and be empowered. And so I just thank you so much.
Thanks so much for coming on today.
Yeah.